Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Karpo here, back again with another Borderlands 3 video. And in today's video, we're going to be showing you all of Amara's skills, trees, and her abilities. But as always, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, smash that thumbs up button, leave a comment down below, and stay up to date for more Borderlands 3 videos. Now let's get started. Now yes, her abilities have been leaked, so we're going to go over all of Amara's abilities right here in this video. Now we have 3 trees and her abilities, starting off with the Brawl tree with a Phase Slam augment. Now next up we also have the Mystical Assault tree with another Phase Slam augment with Astral Projection. And last but not least, Fist of the Elements Phase Glass with a little bit of a Grass ability. Now let's start off with her first class under the Brawl tree and the Phase Slam augment. Amara leaps into the air and slams the ground, dealing damage to all nearby enemies and knocking them up. Now next up we have one with Nature passive ability. Amara gains increased max health and elemental damage resistance to her action skill element. Pretty cool. Now next up we have Personal Space passive ability. Amara weapon shots deal bonus damage based on the distance to her target. The closer the target, the greater the bonus. Next up we have this ability from Amara called Clarity. Amara constantly regenerates health. The lower the health, the more powerful the regeneration. After using an action skill, this bonus is doubled for a few seconds. Sounds like to me she's gonna be a beast. Next up we have Arms Deal passive ability. Amara deals increased splash damage and takes reduced splash damage. Pretty nice. Next up, Root to Rise passive ability. Amara gains increased max health. Next up we have Helping Hands passive ability. For a few seconds after using her action skill, Amara arms remains active and grant her damage reduction. Pretty nice. Next up, for her next skill, we have Mindfulness passive ability. Whenever Amara takes damage, she gains a stack of Mindfulness. For every stack of Mindfulness, Amara gains improved shield regeneration delay and improvement speed. Stack decays after a few seconds. Then we have Find Your Center passive ability. Amara gains increased melee damage. Additionally, for a few seconds after using her action skill, Amara gains increased melee range. Next up we have Vigor passive ability. Killing an enemy with Amara's action skill grants all allies increased movement speed for a few seconds. This effect stacks as well. Then we have Samsara passive ability. Whenever Amara deals damage to an enemy with her action skill, she adds a stack of Samsara. For every stack of Samsara, Amara gains increased gun damage and health regeneration for a few seconds. Stacks decay after a few seconds as well. Sounds pretty cool. Alright, next up we have these augments. We have Fracture. Amara summons a handful of fists that erupt from the ground, dealing damage to enemies in front of Amara. And then we have Downfall augment. Amara leaps into the air and shoots an elemental beam below her, briefly following by a slam. Then we also have Blighted Tiger. Converts Amara action skill to corrosive damage. This does not take effect until after Amara uses her action skill. And then we have this passive ability, Revelation. Amara action skill now creates a nova when it damages an enemy, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. Then we have these skills down here at the bottom. The passive ability, whenever enemy damage Amara, she automatically throws an energy orb back at them, dealing action skill elemental damage. This skill has a short cooldown. Pretty cool. Do unto others. And then we also have the passive skill called Job's Cross. Whenever Amara deals melee damage to an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage and increased weapon damage for a few seconds. And then Guardian Angel. When Amara enters Fight for Your Life, she immediately gains a second wind, restoring her health, and creates action skill elemental Nova that knocks back nearby enemies. This skill also have a very long cooldown. Alright, next up we have Glamour augment. Enemies damaged by Amara's action skills become confused and temporarily attacks their allies. However, action skill cooldown is increased. If Amara targets an enemy with Phase Grass, enemies near the grass target are confused as well. And then to round it all out for this skill tree, we also have Blitz passive ability with melee override. Press the melee button to make Amara dash a short distance forward and perform a special melee strike, dealing elemental melee damage. If a Blitz melee attack kills an enemy, Blitz cooldown is immediately reset. We also have Deliverance Augment. Amara sends forth an astral projection of herself, dealing damage to everything in its path. Whenever Amara astral projection hit an enemy, it releases homing elemental projectile that triggers her action skill elemental effect on enemies. And then we also have one other augment called Stillness of Mind. Enemies damaged by Amara action skills become phase locked until they are damaged or the duration ends. However, action skill cooldowns is increased. If Amara targets an enemy with phase grasp, enemies near the grasp target are also phase locked. So those are everything we have in her brawl tree. Now let's head on over to her next tree. This one is called Mystical Assault with the Do Harm passive ability. Killing an enemy grants Amara a stack of Rush. Activating her action skill consumes all Rush stacks. For every stack of Rush consumed, Amara action skill damage is temporarily increased. Next up we have Fast Hand passive ability. Amara reload speed, weapon swap speed, and mode switch speed are improved. And Violet Tapestry passive ability. Applying elemental effect grants Amara a stack of Rush. Activating her action skill consumes all Rush stacks. For every stack of Rush consumes, Amara elemental effect chance is temporarily increased. Next up we have Ultricity passive ability. Amara gains increased reload speed for every stack of Rush. After consumed Rush stacks, this bonus is increased for a few seconds. Next up we have Transcend. Amara gains increased accuracy and critical hit bonus for a few seconds after activating her action skill. And then Restless. Amara gains increased action skills cooldown rate. Next up, we have Ascended passive ability. All action skill augments gains increased effects. And then from Reset, Amara gains improved fire rate and charge time. And then we have another passive ability called Lay Bare. Enemies take increased damage from all sources for a few seconds after being damaged by Amara action skill. And then we have another one called Wraith. Amara gains increased gun damage. This effect is increased after she activates her action skill for a few seconds. And then Remnant. When Amara kills an enemy with a gun or action skill, she creates a homing projectile that seeks out a new enemy, dealing her action skill elemental damage. Any overkill damage is added to the projectile's damage. And then Awakening. Amara rush stacks gain increased effectiveness. And then we have, last but not least, Avatar. Amara's action skill can be activated while it's cooling down. This skill may only be used once per completed cooldown. Additionally, increases Amara's max rush stacks. Then we have Deliverance Augment. Amara sends forth an actual projection. Whenever Amara's actual projection hits the enemy, it releases homing elemental projectiles that trigger her action skill elemental effects on enemies. And then we have another augment for her actual projection. This one deals increased damage for every enemy that it hits. And then we also have this other augment called Soul Sap. A portion of all damage dealt by Amara's action skills is returned to her or nearby allies as health. Stillness of Mind. Enemies damaged by Amara's action skill become phase locks until they are damaged or the duration ends. However, action skill cooldowns is increased. If Amara targets an enemy with phase grasp, enemies near the grasp target are phase locked. And then Tandava. Amara sends forth an astral projection of herself. When it hits a target, it explodes, damaging all nearby enemies. So that's what we have for our mystical class. Pretty nice. Now, next up we have our last tree, and this tree is called Fist of the Elements. Her phase grasp augment summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks the targeted enemy in place for a few seconds. Some enemies are immune to being grasped and instantly take damage. Next up we have Anemia passive ability. Amara's elemental effects deal increased damage over time and has increased duration. Her action skill elemental effect deals further increased damage. Next up we have also a passive ability, Steady Hands. Amara gains increased weapon handling and accuracy. And then we also have Infusion. Convert a portion of damage dealt by Amara's weapon into her action skill element. And then next up we have Tempest. Amara deals increased elemental damage. Shock damage is further increased. And then we also have this passive ability called Illuminated Fist. Amara gains increased melee damage and her melee damage is converted to her action skill element. Next up we have Wildfire. Whenever Amara applies an elemental effect to an enemy, it has a chance to spread to other nearby enemies. And then we have her other passive ability. This one is called Dread. Amara gun damage is increased for a few seconds after an enemy is grasped. Whenever a player kills a grasped enemy, their current weapon is instantly reloaded. Pretty nice. And then Indiscriminate. Amara bullets that damage enemies have a chance to ricochet and deal decreased damage to other nearby enemies. Ricochet chances and damage are increased if the target is currently affected by phase grasp or stillness of mind. Sounds like this is going to be a pretty fun class to play with. Next up we have Deep Well. Amara gains increased magazine size with elemental weapons. Next up, we have another passive ability, and this one is called Catharsis. Whenever Amara triggers an elemental effect on an enemy, when that enemy dies, that enemy explodes, dealing her attuned elemental damage along with any other element that is currently inflicted upon that enemy. This skill has a short cooldown. Next up, we have a passive ability called Sustainment. Amara gains life steal whenever she deals elemental damage with her weapon. Next up, we have another passive ability. This one is called Conflux. Whenever Amara applies an elemental effect to an enemy, she gains a chance to randomly electrocute, burn, or melt that enemy. Sounds like a whole lot of fun. Next up we have Fist over Matter Augment. Amara summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks down the targeted enemy. After grasping the targeted enemy, large fists appear and constantly smash the area, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Pretty nice. Next up we have another augment. This one is called the Eternal Fist. Amara summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground, locks down that enemy, but whenever the grasped enemy is killed, up to 3 new targets can be sought out and also grasped again. Next up we have Soulfire Augment. Converts Amara action skills to fire damage. This does not take effect until after Amara uses her action skill. And then we have Allure. Amara action skill creates singularities that pulls in enemies. And then we also have Ties That Bind. Amara summons another giant fist that bursts from the ground, locks down the targeted enemy. Enemies near the grasped targets are linked, and any damage dealt to a linked target is shared between all other linked targets. So lock them down, bring them in, and deal damage. Pretty nice. To round it all off, we have Forceful Expression passive ability. Amara guns deal bonus elemental damage based on her action skills element. So there you have it. We have all of the 3 trees for Amara and all of her abilities. We have the Fist of the Elements. We also have the Mystical Assault tree right here. And then last but not least, we have the Brawl tree. So that's pretty much going to end it for this video. Once again, thank you for everybody for all your love and support. As always, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, drop a like on the video if you choose to do so. And once again, I'll be seeing y'all in the next one.